Hi, I'm John McDavitt with the Badger Airbrush Company, and boy do we have a mouth-watering show for you today. Our guest artist today is Jerry Manderfield. He's been airbrushing cakes for the last 10 years. Jerry, can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be showing us today?
Yes, John. There are many aspects to cake decorating. Of them all, airbrushing is by far my favorite, and by the end of the video, you'll see why.
Okay, well, I'm hungry, so let's get started.
Okay.
Before Jerry gets started today, I'd like to take you through some of the basic equipment that we'll be using. And I'm going to start with the airbrush. It is a single action, gravity-fed airbrush. You put your color in here. The air flows consistently through the airbrush. You don't have to worry about air at all. And then you just pull back on the trigger to release your color. Then you can set it down in this handy-dandy airbrush holder. It cradles the airbrush so that it cannot fall and hit the ground and be damaged, and it also prevents you from spilling color. Also, we have a clear hose that you can see is attached to the compressor here, and basically that just lets you see if you have any water trapped in the line or any impurities. The large compressor runs 25 to 30 psi, and it's good for the large bakery that will be doing everything from sheet cakes to small pastries. The small compressor is the 80-3. It runs at about 10 pounds of pressure, and it's ideal for cupcakes, pastries, and smaller cake projects. There are a variety of stencils available on different themes, graduation events, sporting events, and the such, and you may want to check with your preferred distributor to see what they have in stock. Next, we have our airbrush ready colors. Again, I must stress airbrush ready. And you'll want to check with your preferred distributor to find the colors that suit your creative needs. Finally, we have our overspray cleaning chamber, which can be used to expel excess color from your airbrush. And that's it. And now I'm going to hand you over to Jerry, who's going to teach you some basic skills.
Now I'm going to get into practicing techniques. What I'm going to do is show you how to work on dots and lines today. The dots and lines are something we need to practice so we can get the feel for the airbrush, the trigger, and how the food color is dispersed from the cup. Starting with the dots, what you want to do is aim your airbrush straight down. Don't aim it on the side, or you're going to get that overspray. You aim straight down. You move right along. You make dots that are all of the same size. Now, what you want to do is pull the airbrush away from the surface about a couple inches and try to make dots that are the same size also, but what you notice is they're bigger because the airbrush is farther from the surface. Anytime you pull the airbrush away from the surface, it widens the spray. You'll notice when I pull it way back, you get a big wide dot. Now the same goes with the lines. Once you've done dots enough where you feel that you're comfortable with the consistency, try the lines. See how I'm keeping the airbrush close to the surface? You can get it really close and get a very fine line. With a cake, it won't work as well, however. I'm working on cardboard again. But on a cake, if you get it that close, there's a chance you might blow the icing out. But if you keep it back at a safe distance like this, you can get a pretty fine line, which is enough for cake decorating. Again, having this airbrush way back, you get a big wide line. And you'll notice how it fades out. It's not as dark and bold as the closer lines were. Practice these things and you'll be on your way. Now, next, I'm going to teach you how you can use these dots and lines to spray borders on cakes. Okay, back to the borders. A very plain and simple border is just a wide stream. Now notice how I'm spraying farther back. I'm keeping it really light. I could go all the way around the cake like that. I'm just going to do one side just to demonstrate this type of border, and I'll do something different on each edge. Now tying in what we learned before, I'm going to utilize those techniques. That's the wide line. Now I'm going to spray a very fine line, which gives it a definition. It gives you a nice clean edge. If you really wanted to get a good clean edge, you could take some sort of stencil paper, cardboard, anything, lay it on there and spray along. See how it gives you a nice clean edge. It's always nice to tie in a couple different colors too. You don't have to use the same colors for all your borders. So let's try this thing out. Okay, a color that looks nice with purple is pink. So I'm going to try pink. And I can do a number of things. I can do another line, so I have a border that's got two lines. I can spray a two-tone. So you see the pink and the lavender together. You can't, if you hold the gun back far enough, you can't really see where one ends and the next color begins. That's just a way of tinting two colors together. You have to be careful which colors you use together. Some colors don't blend, such as green and pink, orange and blue, because they're on the opposite sides of the color wheel. It's always good to refer to a color wheel if you're not sure what colors can be used together. Now I'm going to try a different border on another edge of this board. Well, I'll turn it here. I'll do an orange scallop border. I'm starting out with a fine line like that. Always run water through to make sure you get the old color out if you're going to go to a color that doesn't want to blend very well. In this case, I'm going to, I think I'll add pink. Okay, how about we try something with those dots on this border. I'm just going to use blue because it'll show up well next to the orange. I'm not going to overlap, I'm not going to overlap the orange and the blue. Intentionally, you'll see how the orange and the blue don't go together. It looks muddy. However, next to each other, the colors complement each other pretty well. And I'm using the dot technique that I showed you earlier, and it gives you a nice even dot. Almost it's starting to look like an Easter egg. Okay, do a little something different on this edge. Whoops. Always make sure your colors caps are tight, otherwise you'll have that happen. You don't want to have that happen on a cake. And spray a fine line of one shade of green. I'm going to use two of the same colors. I'm going to use actually a different color, a different shade of green. This is going to be forest green. Again, I'm going from a dark color to, I'm going to choose a lighter color over here. I definitely need to get the airbrush cleaned out now because that forest green will be the dominating color in there, and if I don't get that out of there, we're going to have a color that's not complementary. Okay, what I'm going to do is use a little yellow. I'm going to spray the background real light. Again, holding the airbrush back at a distance. And I'm going to pink. I'm going to just, this will be the edge of the cake. I'm going to keep it right over here. And you'll see where the pink and the yellow blend together, but again, you can't see where the pink ends and the yellow begins. By holding the airbrush back far enough, the colors just kind of blend together versus using the two different shades of green. By keeping them close, the colors stayed separate. I'll try one last thing on this side of the board. I'm gonna, because I have black and I want to make it a very bold, distinct color, I'm going over it again. And what I'm going to do with that is just make a bright, festive polka dot border on the inside of the black. There's no rules here. I'm just going to pick whatever colors I feel like going with. Of course, if you're doing a cake, you may be trying to apply whatever colors the customer may have, specific colors they want you to use, then you would use what they request. I'm going to hold the airbrush back farther versus keeping it close as I did on here. No need to count how many dots. You just want to do it with enough different colors until the space is filled up or as filled in as you wish it to be. After all, you're the artist. And I think there's room for one last color. I'll make it purple. So this gives us some different ideas, some different techniques and methods that can be used, and a nice variety of borders. These skills also apply to airbrushing in general, even when you're doing a stencil or freehand. All of these skills end up being utilized in just about anything you do in airbrushing. Next, I'm going to take a new board and we're going to do a stencil and a whole border to go with the stencil, something that'll match the whole picture. We've seen a little something about borders. I'm going to take it a step further. We're going to do a graduation design. The graduation cakes are very popular, so I'm going to use a silhouette stencil. And I'm going to lay it on the cake, like so. Again, making sure that the icing is set up and has a little bit of a crust so that the stencil doesn't stick to the icing. The graduate is going to be in black, and I'm going to choose red and blue for school colors because those are pretty popular colors. So, starting with the black, we'll do the silhouette first and move along to the border colors. Okay, as long as the stencil is flat on the cake, there's no need for you to really hold it down. as long, just try to keep the airbrush spring straight down so that it doesn't blow the stencil up. If you get air underneath there, it flutters like that. So you want to keep the airbrush aiming down at it. We're going to start along the edge, and maybe you might want to use your fingertips a little bit just to keep that edge down if necessary. Always keeping your airbrush a slight distance away from the stencil. Get it too close and it makes the airbrush want to flutter. If you get it too far, if you hold it back this far, we might get overspray and then you could see some black on the edge outside of the stencil, which you don't want. If that ends up being a major concern, one thing that I've done in the past is just held a piece of paper or cardboard again, just as a mask, so that any overspray from inside the stencil will just go onto the cardboard or paper versus going onto the icing. So I'm going to hold that up to the stencil as I pull my airbrush back a little farther now to darken the center of the silhouette. This is a lot quicker than taking and drawing a picture of a graduate, whether it be freehand or with a projection machine. Whoops. Human error, that sometimes happens. Nevertheless, it's still faster to take and spray this because the drawing aspect of it takes a little longer. Now when it's time to remove that, just get your finger underneath and pull it off. You get a nice clean edge. I'm going to get rid of the black. Okay, going to red. I'm going to start with the wide spray in the background, keeping it farther away from the surface. I'm also keeping it a little more subtle, a little more pale. Now I'm going very close to the cake with a fine line. I'm going to go over that a little bit. As you can see, I'm not happy with how straight the line is. It's a little crooked, so what I'm going to do is just go over it, and I'm going to move the airbrush back a little farther to compensate, and that'll hide the goof up a little bit. So I want that line to be nice and straight. I'll do the same up here. Holding my right hand steady with my left hand helps me to make a straighter line. Okay. It's time to tie in some blue. Going to make another parallel line. Not getting it too close to the red. I don't want to have the red and blue overlap where you get a little dirtier color again. Red and blue together make burgundy. We don't want that. Now we can do script with this airbrush because we can get it nice and close. If you want to write with your airbrush on the cake and get it a real fine line, you probably would like to turn your air pressure down to about 10 pounds. 20 pounds might blow a hole in your icing. If you get your airbrush this close, like I have it here, that pressure would probably blast a little bit of a hole through the icing. So you're best off turning the air pressure down if you intend to get that close. Now there's different things you can do and go back and make it a little fancier on your writing. You can widen, accent the big letters and the tall ones. Congratulations. We'll just say congratulations, graduate. And I'll do that in a different color. Now, if you're not comfortable writing with an airbrush on your cake, you can do that out of icing. That's actually tends to be the more typical way of doing it, but the airbrush, if you're comfortable with that, you can always airbrush it. Now it's up to you when you're doing the artistic work. If you think that's enough color on the cake, then leave it at that. You can always take it a step farther and you can add flowers. You can do some dots down the side. You may or may not like that. It's entirely up to you. You may think there's enough color on there without it. I'm just showing you here because there's some open space. Otherwise, flowers would fill in that area. One thing about airbrushing is that it's a nice, efficient, effective way of filling in space without the work of doing flowers and extra handwork. It's speedier. So I just threw that in to show you some space fillers. If the final step would be to border the cake with icing. Otherwise, that's the finished product. Now, if you think you've got this down, I'm going to promote you to Cake Decorator. And we'll come back and show you how to do some cakes, and we'll practice right on the cake. Before we begin to create with the airbrush, I'm going to talk a little bit about the icings, which are the medium which we decorate upon. The first one being buttercream, and the other one is fondant icing. The buttercream is used on cakes for the most part. The fondant is on cookies. Back to the buttercream. I like buttercream on cakes because the stencils lay on it nice. You can lay a stencil on, hold it down, and when you stencil on it, you get a nice clean edge on the lines. And you can lift it off without the icing sticking, given that the icing has set up already. You need to give icing a little bit of time to set up before you lay the stencil on it. Also, buttercream holds the food color very well and is solid enough that if you get the airbrush pretty close to it, you can get small lines and dots without blowing holes in the icing. Now the cookie icing is even better because you can lay a stencil on there within 5 or 10 minutes of actually icing it and lay the stencil on, spray it, and pull it off, and you won't have icing sticking to the stencil. You'll get a nice clean edge. Also, one thing to keep into consideration is that the cookies ice smooth. If it's not very smooth, sometimes you get air pockets underneath the stencil, and the food color spreads out underneath the stencil and you don't get a nice clean line. Okay, we're moving right along. We've gotten through the cardboard, practicing on cardboard, on the lines, the stencils, the whole bit. Now we're going to work on the real thing, the cake and the cookies that I talked to you about before. And I'll demonstrate how to get these nice and bright and colorful in a very quick and efficient way. So we're going to be fast, so hang on. Now I'm starting out with black because I'm going to stencil the cookies first. That way when I go back to the colors that I'm going to use, I will have the black in place already. So you always want to get the stencils done first. I'm going to do a couple of my favorite football team. So I hope you non-Packer fans will bear with me. And a couple for, they have stencils that are pre-cut. They have several assorted messages. I'm going to make one that you can do to impress your boss if you want to get that promotion. Here's one for Mom. I'm a mama's boy, so this cookie's going to say great mom. And how about wonderful dad, since Dad taught me how to do this stuff. Okay, now that we've gotten the black down, I'm going to change to assorted colors. The different colors are going to tie into each of the three products I'm doing. I'm intending on making the cupcakes multicolored. I'm going to make the cake multicolored on the side as well, and a little bit of tint on the top. And later on in the show, we'll decorate that cake. And the cookies, I'll do Green Bay Packer colors and whatever I feel like doing on here. But the idea is to do it from a production standpoint, so you're not changing colors so often. You want to be able to do pick one color, go with it all along before you change colors. Make sure you have everything that color, and then you move along. So now what I'm doing is cleaning out our black. Always got to make sure the black is cleared out of there well, because I'm going to switch to yellow. Yellow is a pretty soft, pale color, and if you don't have the dark, dirty color out of there, it'll pick up some of that. So. Okay, starting with the cake, I'm going to get the gun in nice and tight, close enough that I don't blow out the icing, but I want to get as fine of a line as possible, because my goal is to get as many colors on here, and I'm going to keep them isolated from each other instead of blending them on the sides. So I want to get a nice fine line, and that's what I've done there. I'm also going to make a pale yellow border on the inside, which is not quite as visible, but I want it to be pale because the flowers and the writing are going to be on top of a cake, and you don't want the airbrushing to take away from the writing, because that's the message you're trying to convey. The writing is the #1 aspect of it. So the airbrushing that you do on a background of a cake really should be something that doesn't take away from that. Okay, so I'm still on yellow. Now I'm doing these Packer cookies. I did the yellow. I'm not worried about the green yet because I'm going to come back to that color later on. I'm going to spray just the edge of these cupcakes, this side first. And later on I'm going to come back and turn the board, and I'm going to spray it from a different angle. And by the time I'm done with them, I'll have 4 different colors on them, but in a way that they don't run into each other and make each other color look muddy. So that's it for the yellow. I like to switch from the lighter colors to darker colors going through, because the if the gun isn't quite as cleared out, the colors don't show so much. Now I'm doing pink. Okay, for Mom's cookie's going to be pink. I'm just going to spray a nice light pink border around there for her. I'm spraying these cupcakes from the other side now, the other angle. Notice at a sharp, instead of spraying down at them so you get a straight line, I'm spraying at a distance and from a low profile so that it sweeps across. And each time I change directions, I'm letting up on the pressure. I don't keep continuing spraying, otherwise I'd have overspray over here and there. Okay, some purple. And a little purple on here. Keeping the gun down low. And now I'm going to go to blue. Actually, we'll do Boss's cake here with a little purple. This method can be applied to any number of products. The reason I feel that I'm saving time doing it this way because I'm doing all of the products, getting them done sooner because I'm not having to change the colors 3 separate times. I'm going to do, instead of having to do the cake and then change the color 5 times and then do the cupcakes and have to change them 4 times and then the cookies, I'm doing all 3 types of products at one time, changing the color. By the time I'm done, I'll have changed the color 5 times, but gotten a nice variety of products. And you can do this on a larger basis. In a bakery shop, you have more space than what is here, so you can line up your bench with all kinds of good stuff. Okay, now the final color in these cupcakes, I'm not going to add any more color beyond this. Otherwise, we're going to get a dirty look. I've got as much on there as I can possibly get on without getting a muddy look, because the pink blends with yellow, yellow blends to purple, purple blends to blue, and blue to yellow, which actually is a little green in there. But you can't get any more colors in there than that without getting a dirty look. This works pretty nice because it's probably cheaper than dirtying up several towels. Your laundryman will be happy with you if you're not turning in towels like this all the time. Okay. I'm switching over to green. On the cake I'm going to use, I have 2 different brands of green here today for a very important reason. This particular brand of green is a bright, almost a lime green. It's more festive with this, but with like the Packer cookies, for example, I need a forest green. So what I'm going to do, first I'll get Dad's cookie sprayed, and I'm going to take a different brand. You can blend 2 different colors in the cup. What you want to do is once you get that extra color in there, just give it a little bit of a shake. Don't do it over your cake, because if it dribbles over the edge of the cup and onto your cake, you're going to have a little bit of a mess. But if you just swirl it around to mix that color in, you get a more of a consistent color. I'm going to fill in the G's. Notice how close I can get to this icing. This is the fondant that I talked about earlier. It allows you to get very close without blowing a hole in it because the icing is relatively stable. Okay, that would complete the actual airbrushing on these products. The cookies would be a finished product. The cupcakes could be topped off with any number of picks or flowers or balloons, anything you wish, or you could put them out like that. They're pretty enough. It was a fast product to make. And the cake I'm going to finish later, and you'll see how it gets done. As you can see, we've added some flowers, some vines, and a couple other details, some writing. Now I'm ready to put the finishing touches on this particular cake. I opted to put the white flowers on, but I didn't have the colored icing ready, so I'm going to airbrush the flowers after they're on the cake. That's optional. That can be done any number of ways, but I'm going to demonstrate how that can be done. I'm going to just stay with pink. And I'm going to stay a little bit away from the flowers as not to blow the petals out. But not too far away or we'll have overspray on the side of the cake around the flowers. I'm just keeping it light, just hitting the edges of the petals. These flowers were made about 4 hours ago, so the icing had time to set up. If they would have been just made within the last few minutes, getting the airbrush that close would really damage the petals and probably make the flowers not feasible. So with that, I'm going to conclude the decoration of this cake. A couple of rosebuds and a few leaves and we'll be done. I hope this gives you a few extra ideas on how the airbrush can be applied to cake decorating. There's so many more things that can be done, but this is a good starter. And next we're going to do a quick design on a quarter sheet cake. Okay, and the last item for the show will be this dinosaur design that I chose to do on this quarter sheet of cake. I'm going to stencil the dinosaur in again, and after that I'm going to show a quick way to do a background. Because there's always space left over after the picture, you want to have something to make it look like a full picture. I'm going to spray some mountains and a sunset in the background of the dinosaur. But I will start with the stencil. Always going with black on the stencil. Sometimes it's necessary to push down on the stencil in some areas, depending if it's touching, it needs to be touching the icing. So if it's away from the icing, don't be afraid to put your fingertip on there just to hold it down in the area that you're spraying. The cake's not always going to be as smooth as that cardboard we were working on before. Okay, now that's it for the dinosaur stencil. I'm going to move on to some colors in the same fashion that I did the coloring before on the cupcakes and the cookies. I'm going to start with yellow. just sweeping across the cake. I'm keeping the brush farther away now because I intend to overflow the pink and blend the colors in together. So I'm keeping the colors soft and very pale as they spread out away from the sun. Now I'm starting away from the yellow and I'm bringing the next color in towards the yellow. Gradually blending the two together, but not to cover one up. And lastly, for the sky, I'm going to use blue. And the blue will blend into the pink, and wherever the pink and the blue touch, we'll have a little lavender. And while I have blue in the gun, I'm going to spray the water. What I'm going to do, though, to get a nice clean edge for the shoreline, because I'm going to have mountains in the back later on, I'd like a nice clean edge. I'm going to use that stencil, just the edge, as I did with paper before. And I'm going to lay it along the bottom of the mountain here, and just run the blue across. And now the next color I can go into from blue is lavender. Nice thing about that, I don't really have to clean the gun out because lavender on the color wheel consists of pink and blue. So by throwing the lavender in after the blue, it remains lavender. I don't have to worry about the blue muddying up the color that's already in the gun. And now I'm doing the mountains. Now the stencil that I used, this was all the mountains that existed were right here. I'm going to add my own. This does not take a certified artist to draw mountains like that. That's grade school stuff. With the water we get a little bit of reflection, so I'm going to incorporate that, just some of the color scheme. The next color would be green. I'm not finding my green right now. What I'm going to do is improvise. This is a way of making green, yellow, and blue on the color wheel make green. So I'm going to show you how you would have to come up with green if you didn't have any green in the house. Put a couple drops of yellow and a couple drops of blue together, and lo and behold, we have green. And I'm going to add a little touch of brown to the dinosaur next, after I spray these palm trees. I'm just filling in the stencil that was provided. You can always go from green to brown on a dinosaur because that dinosaur is kind of a muddy color himself, so. Accenting certain lines. And you know what, I missed a little bit of blue down here, so I gotta go back to that shortly. Okay, that would conclude the airbrushing on this particular cake. Now it's ready for writing in a border, and it's on its way out the door to your customer.
Well, Jerry, that takes the cake. So before we leave, do you have any special tips or ideas or anything that you'd like to share with us?
One big one, just have fun with it. Be patient because sometimes it takes practice, and once you get it down, you can really go. The creativity is endless.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching. Happy airbrushing.